Hello, hello, and welcome, Isabelle, to the Feminine Frequency. I am buzzing. I am so lit up to have you here for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I've been seeing you do this for a while, and it's such an honor to be on the show.
Yeah. We originally crossed paths in a mastermind and we were in a similar, business cohort. And it's been so inspiring to watch your expansion and watching, the impact that you're making in the world and the way that you're sharing your voice and your message. And so that's why I felt inspired to bring you on the show because the way that you show up in embodied leadership is just like, I can feel it, I can sense it. And I know that you have so many amazing codes to share with our listeners. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you so much for that beautiful reflection. I'm like really on it, and I feel like it's two powerful women having a conversation because I've just witnessed you as much in stepping into your power, and it's such a beautiful place to reconnect here in
Mhm.
your work and in my work, and this kind of intersection of them. So
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, there's so much alignment, especially in the realm of embodied leadership. And this is something that we're going to be talking about today because there are so many women right now on their path of spiritual awakening and who maybe have been on the path for several years. And many of these women are feeling called to something greater. They're feeling called to
Mhm.
deeper purpose, feeling called to make an impact in the world. They're feeling called to share their gifts. And I really feel like right now there's something incredible happening in the collective consciousness. And I believe that we are individually each here for a reason at this time in history. And so I'd love to even just start there with you explaining about New Earth consciousness and what you feel like we are moving through right now as a collective.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely resonate with what you've just said. Like, it's a special time, and we definitely came here for this. And it almost feels like I've been on this journey for so long, like the spiritual awakening and awakening to the deeper truths and to like this whole new world that we're going to talk about more. And I feel like people are now starting to catch on in the collective. Like, it gets way more mainstream, but in a good way for people, and especially women, to tap into their spirituality, to tap into higher consciousness, to also like rebel against systems that have been in place for so long and that have not been serving us in a way. So I feel like it's like very exciting to witness that and to feel that movement in the collective, especially as someone who has had a spiritual awakening like 10 years ago, and it never stops. Just the initial one was like years ago for me. And now, like in the work with my client, I feel them and I see them and I witness them moving through the same realizations and patterns and also shadows that I've been moving through. And that's just really inspiring that it gets to be on such a big scale now compared to what it was a couple of years ago. And that's definitely some dynamic right there. I feel like especially like on the feminine frequency, so let's talk about the women because I feel like they are the leaders of this movement. Some men too, but especially the women are waking up to their feminine power, and I like to call it the feminine force because it has a little bit more fierceness behind it, because I feel like that's really what's happening. A lot of women are stepping into like this energy of self-expression and leadership in a very loving and positive way, and almost like renaming or changing what it means to be a leader. Because we have a lot of, when I say leader, I sometimes get comments in my Instagram and in my socials, and also from clients who worry about using that word and using that wording. And I think that's really interesting because we connect so many negative things to the word leadership and to the word leader, because it's been used in a very masculine and in a very destructive way, even. And the women are reclaiming that in their own ways.
Yeah, I'm seeing that so clearly right now too. And this is such a pivotal time in history. We are experiencing so many worldwide events and so
Mhm.
many political events. And, there is a lot of shadow and darkness that is coming up from the underbelly of society that truly has been there for centuries and is really at this peak time right now where it's impossible not to look at. It's
Mhm.
impossible to hide from. It's impossible to pretend that the old systems like our government, our healthcare systems are, pillars of society that people used to invest their safety in. People are starting to wake up and being like, huh, there's got to be a different way. Like this doesn't feel right. And as you said, I do feel like there is this great awakening of women stepping into their leadership and shifting out of this more patriarchal, male dominated leadership realm. I believe that there are really good men out there. I
Yeah.
believe that there are men with good intentions. I don't believe that all men are evil and that everyone in power is evil. There's just a huge imbalance that's been happening. And to me, feminine leadership really speaks to leading from the heart and the soul, leading from intuition, leading from love and kindness and generosity, but also leading from a place of sovereignty and boundaries and power. Like, I think that when people maybe hear feminine leadership or women in leadership, I think there can also be misunderstandings of what that's supposed to look like and what that what that entails. So when you think of embodied leaders or women stepping into leadership, like what do you see happening and how would you describe maybe what feminine leadership means to you?
I think women start to reclaim how powerful they truly are. When you think of what women are, like we are literally the portals between the realms. If women decide to no longer birth any humans, like we have so much power. It's like just a theoretical thing. I don't think that's actually gonna happen, that all women not, like decide we're not gonna bring any more souls into this realm. This is not gonna happen. But if you only think of that power that we hold, we could do that. Like we are the portals to this realm. We are the portal between the non-physical and the physical. So we are a massive co-creative energy. And for many women, that translates into becoming a mother, and that's a beautiful path. But I see like a almost like another branch of women who have a different purpose, who have to birth something else other than a physical human being. For some, it's both. They like have both of these paths ahead of them. But I also see a lot of women who really feel the urge to birth something powerful, which is a project or a movement or a place for women to connect or for people to connect in general. And I feel like that is what's like really happening right now. A lot of women have this immense desire to take part in a shift and to also not just witness that shift, but actively take part in it. And the shift is happening. Like we feel it, and even people who may not be super aware of it, they feel that winds are changing, and like you said, like the political climate changes, and so much is going on that is not all positive. Like it's a lot of chaos that is being stirred right now, and a lot of things that are coming up that need to be seen. The shadows that are surfacing and the systematic suppression and the systematic, yeah, just a lot of dark energy that is being revealed. But that is part of this shift. I talk about this all the time on social media. It's a big part of my content that the darkness that we see is not becoming more, it's just being revealed, and we're finally seeing it for what it is so that we can face it, transmute it, and also just be in power, because knowledge is power. And the more we know about the structures that may be hidden, the more we can become sovereign in our decisions, in our way of how we want to live and how we want to contribute.
Yeah, I'm like, I have a huge smile on my face and I'm just like nodding at every sentence. I'm like, yes, this is huge. And You recently created a piece of content that really stood out to me, and I think it might have gone pretty viral and was shared many, many times. And it was this piece of content of the roles, the different roles of the New Earth leaders.
Hmm.
And one of the roles you talked about, or a couple of them, was around like an off stage leader and an on stage leader. And, you talked about visionaries and you talked about healers. And I kind of want to dive a little bit more into this piece around like everyone having their own unique role, because I think that's something where people where women get intimidated is they feel like it has to look a certain way, or maybe they have to do it the way that I'm doing it or you're doing it or other people are doing it. But I think that so many women felt really seen by that post of like, oh wow, I can share my gifts in ways that actually feel authentic to me, that feel aligned and true for me. And yeah, I love that piece of content. So is there anything that you want to share about the different roles of the New Earth leaders?
I think what you've just mentioned about the offstage and the onstage leaders would be interesting for your audience to hear.
Mhm.
So I like to call them offstage and onstage leaders or light workers for the very reason that some souls come into this experience and into this art incarnation with the sole purpose of influencing people in their immediate surroundings. So their family, their friends, they may be very social and outgoing and have a lot of in-person meetings and in-person friend groups and stuff like that. And then there's other people who like to be more on a stage. They like to be, it could be an online stage, like something that we do. We are on stage light workers. We put ourselves out there, our own social media. We grow a following. We grow a movement of people who have the same intentions and the same vision for the world. So that is more like the on stage light worker type. And what was really interesting about this post, and what I found so funny and also inspiring, a singer that is quite known, and I can just say the name, it's Medina. She's a, like, I think a Danish singer, and she's quite known in Europe. And she commented, or what did she do? I can't remember. She commented or she reshared or liked something. She interacted with the post. And I was like, wow, it spoke to her, most likely because she feels like the on-stage light worker fits to her, because she's on a stage, she's literally singing. She's literally singing to an audience and doing pop music. And I think that's so cool that she saw herself in that post, because that's exactly what this means. It doesn't mean that you have to be a singer, but even people who are on the stage literally can have a light worker mission. And no
Hmm.
matter how big or small the stage is, some people thrive off of that feeling of creating a movement and sharing a message and finding purpose in that. And there's almost like a negative taste to it that many people feel when you say, like, I want to be known, or I want to have a large audience or something like that. And I really want to make people think differently about this. There's nothing negative, there's nothing ego driven about this if your intention and your vision comes from a soul led place and from your heart. So I think that's really something that, yeah, I see in my work a lot. When women come to me and they have this desire, they almost don't dare to say, I want to grow to 100,000 on Instagram, and that's my goal for this year. And I'm like, that's a cool goal. You're not doing it for any ego driven reasons. You're doing it because you have a big mission, you have a purpose behind it. And you know that with that voice and with being seen on a stage, even if it's online, you can fulfill that mission. So it's actually coming from your inner knowing of what you are meant to do here, and not from this pointless desire of wanting to be famous. It's much deeper than that.
Yeah, I really love that reframe and that insight of, I think this idea of taking up space and being seen can sometimes be viewed as egotistical or self
Hmm.
centered. And there are definitely many people who are operating from that way. And I
Oh,
think it's
yeah.
important to note that shadow aspect, because it might come up at some point, as you start to grow your following. There may be times where you actually do have to check in with that shadow and like, okay, what part of me is leading right now? Has my ego taken over? Has my identity started to get wrapped up in the fame or the popularity? And if so, can we just acknowledge that and even come back to, okay, what is the heart and the soul of the message and the mission that I came here to deliver? And I've had to do this quite honestly many times in my business. I think that it can be easy to get lost in the noise. And this is a practice of coming back to love, coming back to truth, coming back to what is more soul centered or heart centered. And yeah, I love this perspective of that you can do both. You can be in your heart and you can have a big following and create a big impact in the world. That it doesn't mean that it has to be one or the other. And speaking to the offstage light workers, I know many women who, and I'm curious, even when I talk about offstage light workers, like I imagine that some of these pieces tie into people's astrology or human design and different aspects of their soul blueprint of what makes them more of an online or an offline light worker. And we need the offline light workers. We need the women who are in person spreading the love, or who are supporting other women's missions, and who are, I've even seen light workers in at restaurants, at
Yes.
doctors' offices, in hospitals, in schools. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to look a certain way, as in, like, I host in-person women's circles or women's retreats, and that makes me an offline light worker of sorts. It really can be in being a mother, like you raising your children with consciousness. Like, and I think even that elaborates on the term leader, because yes, sometimes leadership means starting a movement and growing a business and creating something, an offering for to support people. And other times leadership is that quiet leadership of, how are you leading your life? How are you leading your family? How are you leading your friendships? And I think that conversation honestly is where leadership begins, is in that more internal leadership in your life. And then as you continue on that path with your decisions lining up with your values, it's like, now I may want to guide others and lead others on their journeys.
Absolutely. I think a lot of the offstage light workers don't even know that they're light workers. That's what I've experienced a lot. And I know a lot of people who I would consider light workers, and they are not spiritual. They don't know that word. They don't know anything about this spiritual terminology that we have. And they are still fulfilling that mission. They're just not meant to be aware of it, or be in a place where they say, like, hey, I'm doing this and I'm very conscious of it. They're just so naturally in their leadership and in their mission and in their purpose, that whatever they do and whatever they follow passionately is part of their mission, and they don't have to be aware of that. And in my work, I obviously come along more of the on stage light workers, because I work with women who want to be on stage, they want to grow following, they want to grow a movement, and they want to share their message, and they have this intense desire to just take part in this shift and share their gifts and bring people together, and like there are so many things they want to do. So I come across more of those, but in my private life I see so many people who I would consider light workers, and they don't even know what that would mean, but there still are. They just don't know
Mhm.
that we would call it in our spiritual bubble, that we have a name for that.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's kind of reminding me of the earlier stages of my spiritual awakening, like some of the terms I didn't know that it was my intuition speaking to me, or I didn't know that my emotions were guiding me in a certain direction. Like there were just things that I wasn't aware of, and it's not right or wrong, good or bad, but it's like looking back, I'm like, oh, that's what was happening. Okay, I get it now. And yeah, it's kind of fun to see, people who are embodying this light worker energy, and they're part of this new earth leadership, and maybe they don't even have to know that specifically. So yeah, I think that that's really cool to notice. Yeah, and I think for women maybe who are on the beginning parts of their spiritual awakening journeys, I think it'd be really interesting for them to hear a bit about your awakening. I know that you've had several near death experiences, and that has really shaped your path, and maybe how you going through your awakening then transitioned into your path in leadership, like that journey
Mhm.
that you've been on. If you can take us on that and share more with us.
Yeah, of course. I have to start really early in my life because it basically starts right after I was born. So my story starts and my spiritual story starts quite early in my life. I was born with a congenital heart defect, a quite rare one, and I was in a critical condition right after I was born, and I flatlined, and I had to be they had to do CPR on me, on my like baby body. And I don't really remember that, so I don't remember that consciously. But years later, in a like minor heart procedure that I had to undergo, I underwent anesthesia, and then memories started to pop up because the same thing happened again. I flatlined, and it wasn't a super critical condition because they were operating on me, so they could like interfere. That kind of triggered like some memories to come in, and I remembered like it was more like a feeling, and I remembered that I saw my physical body from outside of my physical body, like the typical thing that you hear. I can 100% confirm that. I had the same memory of that, but I was like 9 or 10 or 11. I wasn't really like aware of what was going on, but I told my mom about it, and I was able to describe the little blanket I was laying on as a baby, and I couldn't see that because it was placed underneath me, and there was no way I would be able to have that memory stored somehow because I actually saw it. It was placed in like a little carriage where I couldn't see it in the hospital, and she was like, how do you know that? How do you know like this specific blanket? And this is when I started to think about it, but because I was so young, I forgot about it again, and I was like, I don't know what that was. Like weird that I remember that, and weird that I was somehow picking up that information, and I could see the pattern of this blanket, and it was so vivid to me. But I was so young, I didn't really think about it. And then a few years passed, and I had to undergo actual open heart surgery at the age of 19. So I was an adult, a young adult then, and I was very aware of that process. And that was when I was really faced with the possibility of either not waking up from that surgery because it was a very complex one. I had to, like, I'm in Germany. I'm located in Germany, and we had to ask several surgeons and several hospitals if they had like an expert that could take on that case because it was quite complex to operate on, and not many people have the condition that I have, so it has to kind of be an improvised surgery and not like a standard procedure. And I really had to find someone who could do that surgery on me, which put a lot of pressure on me because I was like afraid that it would not go well, because when you undergo surgery it's always scary, but if you know it's something that is like routine and they do it a lot, it feels much better than you
Mhm.
going in not knowing if they can fix what they're meant to fix and if they can improvise and find the solution for me. So I had a really, really good doctor. It's like one of the best surgeons, I think, worldwide. So it was really
Mhm.
crazy that I actually was yeah, got that surgery from him. But this whole process of needing to find someone who can actually help me, and this not being sure if it's gonna work, and it put a lot of emotional pressure on me. And that was the first time that I did shadow work, but I didn't know that I was doing shadow work. So I faced like all these fears, and I wouldn't suppress them. I really faced them. And my way of doing that was connecting. One thing was connecting with my soul, and I did that completely intuitively. I was a little bit spiritually interested in my teens, but it never went over anything. It was just like the normal, like you like tarot cards and you dive a little bit in. It wasn't something that actually made me connected to my soul, but that moment was that moment where I felt connected to my soul. And I made this deal with myself, with my higher self, cosmic self, whatever you want to name it. I made this deal that I would either wake up much in a much better condition or not wake up at all. Because the least thing that I wanted was to wake up and not be myself anymore, or be in a critical condition, be in a coma for a long time, not knowing how I will end up. That was a very, really, really big fear of mine, to basically have a situation that causes brain damage or any like critical condition. I was really, really afraid of that. And my soul and I, we were like, you're either going to wake up or you're not going to wake up, and both is fine. And I got to this point of actually feeling okay with either versions. And that was crazy for me because
Wow. Yeah, I'm just
obviously,
thinking like 19 years old, like having to be
yeah,
faced with this decision and being willing to go there into those fears.
yeah. Obviously, I didn't want to die. I didn't want to leave this earth and like leave my life, but I felt like such peace because I had made this deal and I knew it was gonna be fine either way. And that was that was the first thing. If you would ask me, like, what was the moment where you really felt like you were in your power, that was the moment. Because I really felt like that was me working through those fears and facing them and finding like this inner peace that everyone's talking about in such a dark place. And spoiler alert, it went well. Otherwise, we wouldn't sit here. And it actually went way better than everyone would have expected. So they expected me to be in like a coma for my body to recover for about 6 weeks. And I woke up not even 5 hours later. Like they didn't even have to induce the coma because I was so like well and physically healthy and strong. And then I was like, okay, this feels divinely guided. This feels like I'm meant to live through this. I'm meant to experience those emotions. And it felt all really scripted out for me in a beautiful way. And I found a lot of purpose in me going through that surgery and all this emotional turmoil that came with it. I really felt like that was something that was chosen on a higher level by me, for me. And that's also when I started to be more interested in things like spirituality and shadow work. And I found like books that I really liked, and I started to dive in by myself. But what was really like skyrocketing my spiritual awakening was that I, after the surgery, like when I recovered and I was doing okay again, it was a long recovery journey, but I was doing fine pretty early. I couldn't really sit, and like all the physical stuff wasn't where it's supposed to be, but I felt good and I knew I was gonna be fine. And that's when like all this cosmic information started coming in. It almost felt like I was reconnecting during that surgery with my higher self, or with my cosmic self, with my higher consciousness. And I opened the portal that would allow this information to come through. Like the channels were opened. And just a little nerdy medical information about like open heart surgery. When you're under anesthesia, they actually make your heart stop. So your heart does not beat during the entire surgery, and you are being attached to what is called a heart lung machine. So you're clinically dead for the time of the surgery, and the machine is just pumping the blood through your body artificially. So I feel like that was this moment for me where I reconnected with my cosmic self, and those channels opened, and it was all meant to be that way. I genuinely believe that this was like a pre-birth agreement, a pre-birth plan for that spiritual awakening to happen in that way. Because after that surgery, I remember those near-death experiences that I had as a child. I remember them very vividly, and I could finally make sense of what they were, and more information came in and more visuals came in, and I just knew, okay, that was what was happening. And from that point on, all this information started to come in through different sources. So a lot of things were just coming to me like a channeling, like an inner knowing, a sudden knowing. But a lot of things also came in through teachers that I found, through books that I stumbled across, and or documents online that I found, and like they opened up the next level of my awakening. And it was so much and so quick that it definitely wasn't a coincidence. It was this almost like rodeo drive of me getting all that information. And every day I was growing so much and diving into so many new things and understanding so much more about myself, about the world, about like all these cosmic topics. And I really feel like this was the plan all along. And this is also why I have this heart condition, because without it, I probably wouldn't be able to do the work that I do in the way I do it.
Yeah, so powerful to hear your story. I'm like at the edge of my seat with like these details about your open heart surgery. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. And I really love how you have the consciousness and the awareness to be able to, you know, perceive and understand what you've been through from the lens of like, this is actually a contract that my soul made, and this is the journey that I was meant to go on. And yeah, I remember after my first spiritual awakening, which was not through a near death experience, but was my own journey, that I had a very similar experience about that rapid acceleration. And that is like a frequency that I believe that we tap into when we are living in truth. I believe that's a frequency that comes through when we are taking courageous action and following where our soul is guiding us. And I do feel when I say it's a frequency, it's like the energy that we are vibrating at is so high that information is able to come to us quickly. Manifestations are able to come through quickly. And throughout my journey, there's been times where I've been very tapped into that frequency. And then there's times where it feels dense and it feels heavy. And I have to go through the excavation of, ooh, something's out of alignment, something's not right here. What am I holding on to? What is not serving me right now? And then going through what I talk about often on the show, which is, death and rebirth cycles to continue the evolution and step into my next identity. Recently, I've gone through another portal of acceleration
Mhm.
where things are happening super, super quickly. And there's a new frequency and a new identity, a new version of myself coming through. So I like what you shared earlier in our conversation about like, it really is an ongoing journey and there's multiple different evolutions that we're each going to go through on this path. And yeah, I want to speak to the women who maybe are on this path of awakening and maybe they've had certain spiritual experiences and they want to take things to the next level. They want to step into leadership. They want to maybe be on stage, whether it's the virtual stage or in-person stage, or they want to be seen, they want to guide other people. Like that transition going from, oh, I've had my own experiences or I have all this wisdom and this knowledge that I've learned and now I want to share it with others. I think there can be a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of perfectionism, a lot of comparison. Like there's so many things that can come up during that transition. And so is there any message that you'd like to share with the women who are feeling that call to a greater purpose and maybe they're trying to figure out what that is or how they can actually step into it?
Yeah, I really would love to talk about the imposter syndrome because I feel that coming up so much in the work that I do with my women. And what I always tell them, or what I try to make them feel for themselves and realize for themselves, is that when you have a spiritual mission here on earth, and when you have the purpose of expressing like a spiritual message in your work, that is not any less valuable than any other profession. So it's okay to be confident in that. It's okay to know that you know things, because I feel like that's another thing too. We want to, in the spiritual community, we want to be like so aware of everyone's truth and of like different perspective, because it's so multi-layered and it's not just, there's not just one truth. There's many truths, and there's like some truth and some, there's always two coins, two sides of the same coin, and we have to be very open and multidimensional to really be sovereign in our expression. So we become hyper aware of not standing in our truth. That's what I've noticed a lot of women do. Like they know things are true, or they know that this is their truth, but they don't really dare to express it, to not speak over everyone else, if that makes sense. And what I like to tell them is that when you have a message to share, and you have to share it in a certain way from a certain perspective, only you can do that. So even if it doesn't align with someone else's truth, that is their truth, because other people will resonate with that, which will get them to the same, or to a similar lesson or conclusion. So we can believe on our spiritual journey, we can believe some things, or believe some things to be true, or follow certain teachings, to then later realize, okay, this was not the whole truth. This was just a puzzle piece that helped me find my truth and find the lesson that I needed from that. So what I would love to tell these women who hold back their truth and who are afraid of expressing that fully is that your truth is your perspective, and it's so unique. Like, every light worker has a different perspective, and the people who are meant to resonate with you, they will find you and they will resonate with your perspective of that truth. And your profession, if that's spiritual, it's not less valuable than a doctor or a lawyer. I mean, it's a strange comparison because it's so different, but if you really think of it, if I come to this planet and my soul chose that I will be an amazing lawyer, and I bring like the personality traits and the negative and the positive aspects of a human to be really good at that job, that is okay. Like, everyone would say, yeah, you can be proud of that, and you can talk about this. But if you are a woman who comes to this earth with a spiritual mission, and you have all the personality traits and all the wisdom and all the positives and negatives to be good at that, we hold back because we feel like that's not the same level of purpose or mission, or it's not the same importance. And I think that is what creates a lot of imposter syndrome. Women not seeing how valuable their work is because they compare it with work that is completely different. But we need all of that. It's the same with art. Some people would argue that art is something that is not as important as a doctor or a lawyer or any other real job. But if you imagine a world without art, without movies, without music, without paintings, without online graphic, without marketing, without anything that is creative, that would be a sad, sad world. And the same goes for the spiritual leaders. We really have to stand in our power with confidence. You wouldn't go up to the doctor and say, hey, I think you're too confident in what you teach or in what you do. But some women think that about themselves. Like, I cannot share my message in a powerful way. I cannot stand in my truth. I cannot share my spiritual message.
Yeah, that comparison and really just the perspective shift of how really essential it is for women to be stepping into their power as leaders and really claiming that and owning that and embodying it rather than questioning it and doubting it and downplaying their gifts, right? Like, there's so many women right now who are listening who have such incredible gifts and so much to offer. And because of the old paradigm conditioning, they are questioning if they should even share, if they should even follow this path, if they even have anything that's important or valuable to offer. And what I want to double down on and emphasize that you said, Isabelle, is that, you know, we do each have our own magic to bring, and that magic is really important. It's really valuable. And I think the more that we move into this new earth consciousness, and the more women that are courageously stepping into their callings and their leadership, the more that it will be normalized to a certain extent, and where women will be like, that person is showing up in that way. Okay, I can do that too. And that happened to me so many times on my journey. Like, I had to see other women being examples of what I wanted or where my soul was being called towards. Like, right now, I'm feeling deeply called to public speaking and to be sharing my
Hmm.
voice and my message in a much larger way. And if I didn't see other women doing that, I only saw men doing it or people in certain professions doing it, I would be like, that's not possible for me. But because, like, leaders go first, right? And so we get to see where are other people guiding us or what else is possible out there. And you may be the first person in your family lineage, which is me, who has chosen to follow their spiritual path, who has chosen to live in their truth, who has chosen to do things differently. And we do have so much programming around, you need to follow this career path in order to be safe. You need to follow this life path of getting married and having kids in order to be safe. And the new paradigm is completely shifting that reality. It's much more centered around sovereignty and
Yeah.
autonomy, and following your own authentic path is really what I see us stepping into as a collective.
Absolutely. And when we think about like this whole new earth shift that we talked about earlier, when we are pioneering a movement, it always is hard because not many people have done it before us. Like there is no public speaking woman you can look up to when it comes to a paradigm shift. Like there is no woman you can really look up to in the way that they are doing what is happening now, right now in this moment. It's new and it's a timeline. And what I also find very mind bending is that we talk about the paradigm shift and it's so real for us and it's such a huge collective thing. But at the same time, it's also just a timeline because there are so many timelines happening at the same time just on this planet. If you go just in a third world country, they have a very different reality than what we're experiencing, what we're concerning ourselves with. And not to put that in a hierarchy, like everything's valid the same way, but I really want women to understand that we're so close. Like you already are aligning with that New Earth timeline because you are so aware of it, and it's not very likely to be aligned with that right now and to be aware of it. So we feel like it's such a huge thing and such a huge jump to be a pioneer for that or to be a spokesperson for that. But we're so close. There's so many other realities and so many other experiences people have on this planet, and they have never heard of what we are working toward. And it's fine like that. Like that is how the world and earth is structured, to have many different experiences and to have many different timelines that are happening simultaneously. Like the people and the women who are in this frequency of paradigm shift and of the coming of a new earth and of change that we do from within. Like the new earth shift is nothing that happens on the outside, it happens through us. We are so close, we're already doing it, and that's something that we sometimes forget because we are so zoomed in on our little timeline and on our little mission that we have to fulfill here, that it feels so impossible to do, and we don't realize that we're already doing it.
Mm,
Also, the women who are not stepping up yet, who are like hiding still, they are so close. Like, come on. There's so much going on simultaneously, and you are like aware of this shift happening, and you're so close.
yeah, yeah, I know that feeling. And I once had a client describe it to me as she felt like she was in a glass box. Like she could see and feel and sense like her future self and who she was really meant to be, like her higher self. And it felt like it was like right there, but there was like this glass box, like something which technically was like inside of her, like was stopping her from actualizing that reality. And in my experience, this is where powerful mentorship and community is 100% essential, because sometimes those are the blind spots that we can't see for ourselves. Sometimes we need someone else who has been through that same challenge or a similar challenge, who has overcome it. And so they have codes or they have teachings that will help us move through that faster. And I believe part of the New Earth consciousness is that we are meant to grow and evolve in community, specifically as women. And this is almost like we're returning to the roots of how it used to be, that we are meant to do this in community and that we're not meant to be isolated and alone in this new way of being and this new path that we're all charting together. And I've seen it time and time again that women rise way faster and way more powerfully when we do it together. And so I know that, you have an incredible community, I have an incredible community, and there's many incredible spaces and mentors and teachers and guides for women to tap into. And so for the women who are listening, who are like, wow, like this conversation about the new earth leadership and light workers and activating your gifts and stepping into your purpose is something that they're really resonating with. How can our listeners continue to connect with you and learn from you?
Hmm. Um, the easiest place would be Instagram. So I'm very active on there. I post every day. There's a lot of content on there. I'm Isabelle Gloria on Instagram. I'm sure you're gonna link it so I don't have to
Yes.
spell it out. I also have a membership, so it's like a free community with the option to get access to resource library for a monthly payment, but the community itself is for free. And that's for especially the women who are just starting to step into their leadership, who may not be sure of where this is going to lead them, but they really want to do something, but are not ready for like a full on mentorship, maybe. And then I host my mentorship, or I go through my mentorship a couple of times a year. This is like my most hands on offer. It's a 3 month offer with a 3 month support after the actual mentorship. So this is for the women who are ready to go all in, who are ready to build their first offer or their first expression online. So maybe a podcast or any other platform that they really want to commit to, and have a mentor to help them figure out what they're meant to do, how they're meant to do it, what their natural way of expressing and leading is. And like this is a very intense 6 months that will completely change the way that you approach leadership and see yourself in your role. And yeah, I would highly, highly, highly recommend you join the membership if you are like, if you're listening right now and you feel like you want to dive deeper and you want to find out more and just connect with other women who have the same vision for themselves. And yeah, just connect with us and become part of our little movement on there.
Amazing. Yeah, we're going to link all of that in the show notes. And then I think you also have a free guide or free activation for the listeners. Do you want to share a little bit more about
Yeah,
that?
I have a Lightworker activation, and this was actually born by an insight that I had a couple of years ago where I was in a meditation and I received this channeled information that a lot of light workers feel alone. You just tapped on that, like, we really need to come together in community. And you talked about this just now, so I really want to add to that. I received this information that a lot of light workers and a lot of women who are in those roles feel a little bit isolated because they tend to not have a lot of women around them who have the same vision. And it's like a pattern that they feel a little lonely in their spiritual path, especially in the beginning before they start connecting with other women. And I received this information that there's purpose behind that, because if all light workers would be at the same in the same area on the same place on earth, they would all come together, have the best time, but not really have the desire to go out there and find the others. So there's purpose in us not being all in one place, but being just distributed around the planet. And in the Lightworker activation, you really connect with that grid of Lightworkers and you can feel that energetically. And it's such a powerful, powerful energy that is being created because you tap in to that feel and you feel how strong it is and how not alone you are in that. So, yeah, that's a free offer that I've been having for a couple of years now, and people still love it. They still love it.
Well, we're going to include that in the show notes too. And I really, really appreciate you sharing that insight around like the purpose behind that loneliness that a lot of women do feel. I hear that all of the time. And yeah, really seeing that there's this grid of light workers and that we're all in our own geographic locations and where we're actually meant to be right now. And that doesn't mean that we're have to it doesn't mean that we have to do it on our own. So thank you so much for all your insight, for all your wisdom. I know that this is just the beginning, just scratching the surface of the work that you offer. So I'm excited for our listeners to follow you on Instagram, to connect with you, to download your activation, and to keep learning from you. So thank you for sharing your voice and for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me and for letting me share my story. It was really beautiful talking to you today.
Amazing. Thank you so much.